Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? Imagine this. You're playing a tabletop role-playing game. You are the player with the responsibility of being the game master. The player characters have declared some form of action where the results are uncertain, or perhaps events have taken place in the imagined situation where once again the events are uncertain. And so now, because of the rules of the game, the agreement at the table, whatever, it is now your responsibility to say what happens next. And the rules in this case are either silent, or maybe they're not entirely silent, but they're murmuring softly in the background, indistinctly. And you have to make a judgment call at this point. Do I use Fiat? And I can hear my friend Same Old G in the background yelling, no, it's BS. And make a decision based upon any number of things, like this would be dramatic, or, I've weighed the facts here, and it seems like this would happen, and so that's the most logical thing to happen. Or you can decide to use some kind of randomizer, use some kind of dice mechanic to at least give you a prompt. You don't want to make the decision by yourself, so you want to invoke some kind of randomizer or chance. And so, well, how do you make that decision? And when you do it, well, which dice do you use? Especially if the system is really, really silent on this particular example. And so the answer to that is, well, it depends. It depends on a lot of things. It depends on that game. It depends on you and your background and your preferences. It depends upon the preferences of the entire group. And this is one of those reasons that you need to talk with the players, as the Holy Trinity put forth by my friend Same Old G suggests, where you discuss these things. I've had real-world experience with this, so I can give you some of my experience, and I can give you some of my the metrics I use to make those kind of decisions, and, at least some other thoughts. So you can take a lot of this with a grain of salt, but these have been my experiences. In 1981, I was given the explicit instructions by the book I read that there's always a chance, and maybe somebody falls down a crevasse, and so you decide, well, that's really unlikely, but I'll give a 2% chance that this guy lives. And so you take out the percentile dice, even though you didn't use him very much in that game. And we roll and see, now or he lives or he dies. And then you have to explain, why did he live? That sort of thing. So I was very comfortable from a early point in the hobby and an early age to when things were, uncertain, that I would pick something up, pick up a die and say, let's roll this. And, roll low, and maybe 2 or less on the D6 means such and such happens, whatever it happened to be. A lot of my decision-making process or my inclination, comes from that background and using a system with non-unified mechanics and a whole bunch of stuff that I've talked about a lot in the past, actually. And also, my very first YouTube video, I talked about this. I gave this example of somebody climbing up a tree, and do they, get up the tree or not? It's a difficult tree to climb. And I gave examples with 3 different dice mechanics. And said, well, it's really all kind of the same thing. And of course, I hedged my bets and made sure that they were all about 65% or wherever it was before I actually gave the actual number. That's not really important. What is important is, if you come from that kind of background and you are comfortable with doing that, if you're viewing the dice roll in the way that I do, where it's a means to an end, I'm not looking to, intentionally create a story. I'm not, worried about... story as product, more like story as byproduct. I'm not necessarily concerned with things being 100% realistic and accurate in a lot of cases. It's just a means to an end. We need to figure out what happens. For whatever reason, I don't want to decide by myself, so I'm going to introduce this randomizer, and then it's going to tell me what happens, or then I maybe need to add stuff on top of that. So it's a means to an end, in my case, to continue to have the experience, to keep going, if you will. Very often you'll be playing games where they really help you out. If you're playing something, that's BRP based, percentile dice based, they have the resistance table. And no matter what the situation, you can kind of look at both ends and place a value and kind of look and see, okay, well, this is where I need to roll in order to, for this to happen or for that to happen. You might be playing Ubiquity, same thing. I've played games of Ubiquity where I've made a judgment call and I just didn't realize where a rule was or wasn't aware of it. But based on how a system like that works, you can get really, really close. You're never going to be that far off. Other times you're playing a game where this just gives you no help at all. The game is, based on most of the roles that happen in the game. Well, when you're just trying to figure out, does this building collapse or not? Well, there's nothing to help me, and you have to kind of make a judgment call at that point. Well, what do I roll? Do I roll something completely similar? Do I just pick up another die at the table? These are discussions you need to have with the players, maybe not necessarily at that time, although sometimes you might have to stop the game for a second and ask that. But I remember, we had these experiences with my friend Jason where we both, have a very similar background. We both ran a lot of games, but he found that when he was in the player's seat, he didn't really like that as much. He wanted to know what his chances were. He wanted us to, stick to one mechanic and use that because it felt, he was able to conceptualize of things. It made him much more comfortable. I don't want to speak for him. So these are things you need to find out. And so it's really one of those things that, I'd love to give you a definitive answer, but it depends. But it's something to take into consideration, that this may happen from time to time. And, listen, the Game Master can use Fiat sometimes. Imagine, put the shoe on the other foot for a second. If you're a player, it's very infrequent that we have to roll dice to see how our character acts. Not all the time. I played Alien, and that can be a lot of fun. But very often, we're able to exercise player Fiat all the time on what our character does. So occasionally, part of what the Game Master gets to do is they get to play, and part times they get to play the world. It's, and so it's sometimes it can be very fun to make those decisions. Sometimes it's very logical to make those decisions. You know what this NPC is like, and you don't want to use a randomizer. One of the things that strikes me kind of funny, but I understand it, is my friend Anthony, and I don't want to misspeak, so he'll correct me if I'm wrong, but very often, he would prefer to roll dice for a lot of things that happen in the background, a lot of physical things. He doesn't want to make decisions that this attack really happened, or this NPC was successful on their action against this other NPC, or this set of stairs collapses. And so he finds the appropriate rules, he rolls those dice. However, he's less fond of reaction rolls, if I remember correctly. So he knows the NPC. He knows how they would react in this particular situation. Sometimes I'm the exact opposite, and I'll make I guess that would collapse right about there. Sometimes I'll roll a die. And very often I'll find the reaction roll kind of interesting, but not always, But there's a lot of different reasons. My intention with this video is not to cover all of them, but just to, make yourself aware. This is going to happen a lot. There's not really a wrong answer. There's just a wrong answer for you and your group, which way you do it. But it can really open up a lot of possibilities when you start to say, wait a minute, I don't think I know what would happen here. Let's roll to find out. But sometimes that can bring up problems as well, or, depending upon what the group wants and what your intention for playing is in the first place. Are you confused yet? Take it easy, kids.